Is a content that I've had my eye on for a while now, and it's about the 1984 Edmonton Oilers. Yes, even though they lost the Stanley Cup, they fought hard, but it's been 40 years since that amazing team, one of the greatest teams of all time. Um, it was more like of a pass of a torch, Avery. By the way, this is my partner once again. We reunited, Avery. Um, it was like a passing of the torch from the New York Islanders to the Edmonton Oilers. In 83, Edmonton, they suffered the loss when they lost to the Islanders. But 84 was redemption. They came back better, stronger, more sharper, more mentally prepared for the challenge, and they won the Stanley Cup. What a team. Wayne Gretzky, Mark Messier, Paul Coffey. It was an amazing team, amazing team. So 40 years, Avery, 40 years. And
You're
this is the
you're
year,
correct.
and this is the season that they broke records.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And this is when the divisions were the old Smythe division and so on and so forth. Because if you want to talk about, let's say, the Mount Rushmore of teams to build around or to have to get a Stanley Cup, definitely the 84 Oilers would be on that team, as well as the previous Stanley Cup champion, the 83 Islanders, because you have players that still young cemented themselves and their legend. And we talked about this. They cemented themselves for the legends that they are. Yes, a lot of us know Wayne Gretzky when he got traded to the LA Kings a few years later, but Wayne Gretzky made his name with the Edmonton Oilers. There's nobody in Alberta that probably does not, as a kid, wear number 99. Even as a hockey player, if you're a Canadian, you're like given a stick once you're born, and also maybe a 99 Gretzky jersey, you know, probably not an LA Kings jersey, but definitely an Edmonton one. But Messi, but just the players you look on that roster, you're like Hall of Fame, Hall of Fame, Hall of Fame, multiple Stanley Cup winner, Hall of Fame. It's just a treasure trove of how a team builds itself up. And this was just the first of, like you said, a passing of the torch. You had the Islanders, late 70s, early 80s. Now you have Edmonton coming in, which is going to start this wonderful run of just a championship caliber team that still, even 40 years later, they still look back on to try and build around and then try to succeed. And of course, yes, the Oilers did not win this year, but just the run they had, the players this year that they have, not just their captain Connor McDavid, but Leo Drysdale. Just even look at that stacked team. You have your goal scorers, you have your defensemen, you have your bad boys. Even this year, you had Evander Kane. They didn't turn him loose. I think if they turned him loose earlier, it could have been a more even series. But even looking at that Edmonton team in 84, just to see how the future of hockey grew from them, just like previous teams. But there's something about that Oiler team that helped transition hockey into kind of just a regional sport of just a lot of Canadians and a few Americans into, oh, you know, anybody's got a chance. We just have to build around it. And hey, let's look at this team as a catalyst.
Leon Joyce sounded like him, but he came up super small in that cup finals. Super small. But other than that, Edmonton, it wasn't just Connor McDavid. Zach Hyman had a great year. Everybody else stepped up. So I want and expect them to get back. It's not gonna be easy, but I want them to come back next season. And but this 84 team, Avery, Wayne Gretzky was on a mission. He broke the 200 point record. I believe He had 205. Yeah, 205. Goalie Grant four. He won 30 games for them. The team scored 446 goals, which is flat out unbelievable. And speaking of Gretzky, I do have the Oilers jersey. I do have that with him. I might go get it. I don't know. Probably put that at the end of this video. But Wayne Gretzky, I mean, he made his name there in Edmonton, and it's just mind blowing how you trade away a player of that caliber after winning so many championships, something that we rarely see in sports. The owner of the Oilers, I think it's Peter. His name is first name. I forgot his name. He has some huge balls to do that. Not every owner would do something like that, and put up with the scrutiny that he faced, all the death threats he faced. But Edmonton, this goal shows how lethal and how much depth they have because they ended up winning one without him back in 1990. So Gretzky, although he went to the Stanley Cup Finals in '93, but he lost to the Canadians and they didn't get a chance to win a championship. But there's always going to be that what if. What if Gretzky would have never been traded? Obviously, I think they would have won more.
Yeah,
But man, I mean, hey, we
it's
have it.
interesting.
It's gonna be a very 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 long time where we're gonna find something another Edmonton team like this one. I don't. I mean, it's a different era, different rules, different everything. I feel that Connor McDavid is the best Edmonton Oilers since Gretzky, and um, and if he does end up winning a ring with Edmonton, I mean, boy, talk about that huge. That's it. You shut everybody up. You proven that you got the monkey off your back. But
Absolutely.
I really want them. I really want this Edmonton team to win. I'm a
You know what?
Rangers fan, but
Yeah.
it's like all of us sports fans, we have our favorite teams, but then you have other teams that you respect and you want them to
And
win.
and
And that's how I
and,
feel
and
about Edmonton.
Absolutely. And Miguel, that's the one thing I've loved about hockey since I've started following it. Like the saying goes, game recognizes game. There's something about hockey where sure you have your rivalries, sure you have, some of those player versus player moments, but there's something about like as a Floridian, I rep my Lightning and my Panthers. Someone saying, I'm like, well, just pick one. I'm like, I technically I can't. I literally live halfway between that I can go see both teams. So as a Floridian and knowing we have two teams that a lot of people kind of like, oh, how does a sport have two teams and they don't even get snow? But you can see how they've built these teams in order to become champions. And the one thing about hockey is, yes, you have your favorite team, but you have those players that you follow. When I started following hockey, I followed the Detroit Red Wings. This is in the early 90s. This is when Sergei Fedorov and Igor Larionov and Scotty Bowman was the head of that crew. And that was when the beginning of how that team would end up dominating the late 90s. In the 2000s, it was almost like in the early 2000s, it was like a wide open race. It was almost like, who do you want to root for? But like anything, you start with a player because the player is electric. The player is, exemplary. They could be the captain. They could be, a top scorer. There are a lot of these things where people gravitate toward a team based on a player. Even look at it now. Granted, when the Panthers won the cup, I went online and got my Panthers jersey. But again, game recognizes game. I love the respect of the Oilers and what they've done this year. Of kind of the powerhouses between like Matthews and McDavid, I kind of figured like McDavid has the better chance of getting his first cup more than Matthews does. So, I got my Edmonton cup. I got my, McDavid t-shirt, I respect it. I respect, a lot of these teams and a lot of these players. I've traveled to see four hockey games. I've watched a game in Toronto and I've seen the fans and how they love their club. I've gone to Seattle and seen the Kraken. And I'll tell you, that fan base is electric. But going back to your what if, if Gretzky does not get traded, the what if of what Edmonton like was, but what more could have done. But the thing about that Gretzky trade let a lot of people see is if Wayne Gretzky doesn't get traded to the Los Angeles Kings, you're talking another market. They call them small markets if you don't have like the region for the sport. These non, region sports teams, are you going to have the people gravitate toward the Kings if Gretzky is not traded? Are you going to have the opportunity for your San Jose Sharks to get a team, your Nashville Predators to get a team, you know, the Coyotes, now they're Utah hockey club, down here in Florida, the Lightning and the Panthers, Carolina Hurricanes. That is that what if, but it's also the flip side to the what if. If Wayne Gretzky doesn't get traded to that South, that South California climate to where they love their Lakers, what could have been the state of hockey if he doesn't go there? That's that what if you have this great team that eventually change, but yet they are the blueprint that eventually changed how hockey is generated as far as who do you bring in? What is the atmosphere? Who is your captain? Who are the teammates that you rally around, that they grasp, they feed off each other. When you say great teams and you look at this, of course you have the Edmonton Oilers, but let me go back and go with those 98 Red Wings. That was probably the most put together team for a certain decade. If we wanted to do as far as decades goes, the Edmonton Oilers, that 84 team, you have a really great, well-rounded offensive team. For the 90s, let's go for, the Red Wings, literally late in that decade, but two teams that imagine if you put them on the ice and what they could do. You have that scoring powerhouse of the Edmonton Oilers, but you got that down and dirty, we're going to be physical for 60 minutes Red Wings. So that's the one thing about hockey, definitely the respect for other teams, but as well as the players that help build those teams.
I mean, I remember watching that 30 for 30 documentary of what Gretzky getting traded. There was a whole bunch of stuff that were thrown out there because when a trade is about to happen, and when it does happen, there's always speculation. People want to speculate for many reasons why. And one of the reasons people thought that Gretzky went to LA was because of his wife, because his wife was an actress. But his wife ended up saying that, she didn't end up achieving what she wanted to achieve. And plus, she ended up getting pregnant. So, um, certainly, from that aspect, she didn't play a factor in it. Because when we're talking about free agency and trades, it's not just the player. There's also a family involved as well. That's what a lot of people gotta take consideration as well. But I was watching the '84 reunion video yesterday, and this was when it was their 30th. So this was like 10 years ago. And the head coach of the Oilers, one of the things that Gretzky was saying that because they were young, um, he was generous to the team to the point where if they had their parents with them, he would invite the parents to come with them to the team buses and stuff like that. So I'm like, wow, not all coaches would tend to do that. We don't know him personally, but we can only go by what they say. But you could tell that watching that video that there was a lot of harmony and team chemistry. And that's what separates great teams from good teams. Great teams, there's team chemistry, there's harmony. So, um, because you can have a good team in front of you, but can you put it all together and work together when you're on the same ice, on the same court, on the same field. So I'm a firm believer that chemistry is very vital to any team, especially if you want to win a championship.
Absolutely, because if you don't have that on ice chemistry as well as that off ice chemistry, how are you going to gel in when you need it? You know, when the chips are down, when you need to come back, when you're on a skid, are you going to be pointing the fingers at, hey, why aren't you doing your job? Why aren't you doing your job? If you have that solid foundation, your veterans, your captains, you know, even your rookies that are coming in, and a lot of players now, they're just younger and younger, you know, coming into the NHL. So when you have that chemistry that everyone, you know, is working together, everyone is on the same page, you know, everyone is like, hey, this is what we got to do. This is what we need to do in order to achieve it. You're exactly right. Those are the difference between your good teams and your great teams.
And before we end this video, I gotta get the Oilers jersey. So I'll get back to you on that one. Let me
And it's got the
yeah,
C. And
yeah.
it's got the C.
It's got the C, yeah.
Oh, I'm jealous. I'm jealous. I'm jealous. Yeah,
Oh man.
I said on Twitter once that the only hockey jersey I own is when Pavel Bure made it to the Panthers in the early 2000s. But I've kind of stated I need to have, you know, some other hockey jerseys, especially if I travel and go to hockey games. So yeah, that may be on my list. That may be on my list to get a Gretzky jersey. But I think that's the one thing about hockey, like I said before, it's not just the teams you root for, it's the respective players that are playing the game that keeps us going back. And yeah, wherever we live, you know, we root for our teams, but you also eventually want to, you know, root for those individual players too. I'm like, there's a reason a lot of people still love Sidney Crosby and Mario Lemieux and Wayne Gretzky, and a lot of people, you know, rooting for Connor McDavid as well as Austin Matthews. Like they love Austin Matthews in Toronto. When I was in Toronto last year, when I tell you they love him, they love him. So, you know, having those jerseys to not just support the team, but to support the player, that's the one thing I love about hockey. I really, really do. Being a fan for so long and the history of the sport. And interesting that I actually saw the Stanley Cup back in November and the Panthers ended up winning it this year. So those are things that about hockey, you know, you want to experience. And I think we've said it before. There's all about these experiences that you want to achieve, you know, not only as a sports fan, but just, you know, as life in general.